cold didn't just make World War II uncomfortable, it killed, slowed armies and decided who survived the night. When fuel lines were cut and electricity vanished, people didn't panic. They adapted. And the heating tricks they used in remote cabins, shelters and rural homes were so effective that many still outperform modern emergency solutions today. This isn't nostalgia. This is hard-earned knowledge forged in winters where failure meant frostbite or worse. Let's get straight into the real secrets. No filler, no myths, just the clever, practical heat strategies that kept people alive when the world went dark. Here's the first surprise. During World War II, many cabins didn't burn all night. They burned once or twice a day and stayed warm anyway. The secret was mass. Brick, stone and clay heaters were built thick and heavy, sometimes weighing several tons. You lit a hot, fast fire for a short time, then shut it down. The masonry absorbed the heat and released it slowly for up to 24 hours. No constant fuel feeding. No smoke-filled rooms. Just steady warmth. In Scandinavia, Eastern Europe and rural parts of Germany, these heaters were lifesavers. They used less wood, burned cleaner, and stayed warm even when the fire was out. In isolated cabins, where wood was precious and nights were long, this design meant survival. The clever part is that the heat didn't rush out the chimney. Flue channels zigzagged through the masonry, squeezing every last bit of warmth from the smoke before it escaped. Nothing wasted. Everything used. Most modern homes leak heat like a sieve. World War II cabins didn't. People understood something we often forget. Heat rises, but it also escapes sideways and down if you let it. Cabins were built compact, low-ceilinged, and divided into small rooms. Sleeping areas were often raised slightly, trapping warmer air where bodies rested. Doors were hung with heavy blankets or wool curtains to stop drafts. Hallways were avoided. Empty space was the enemy. Every square metre had to earn its warmth. In some alpine and forest regions, families even lived primarily in one room during winter. Not because they were poor, but because it worked. One heat source, one tight space, maximum efficiency. It's not glamorous, but it's brutally effective. Now, this is where things get clever. Candles alone don't heat rooms. But during the war, people learned how to multiply that heat using simple materials. Clay pots, bricks or ceramic tiles were placed above small flames. The flame heated the clay, and the clay radiated warmth long after the candle burned down. In tiny cabins, guard huts and makeshift shelters, this could raise temperatures just enough to prevent hypothermia. It wasn't luxury heat, but it was life-saving heat. The key was airflow. Too little and the flame died. Too much and the heat vanished. Wartime survivors learned this balance by necessity, and the method spread quietly through occupied Europe. This wasn't folklore, it was physics learned the hard way. Modern insulation didn't exist for most people during World War II, so they used what they had. Walls were stuffed with straw, moss, sawdust, old newspapers, even dried leaves. Floors were layered with rugs, sacks, and spare clothing. Windows were covered with oiled paper or fabric when glass was broken or too thin. One overlooked trick was double walls. An air gap, even a small one, acted as insulation. Cold air trapped between layers slowed heat loss dramatically. Cabins built this way stayed warmer with less fuel, which really mattered when supply lines were unreliable or, even non-existent. The lesson is simple and powerful. Insulation saves more heat than any fire can produce. Wartime cabins proved this every single winter. This one sounds uncomfortable, but it worked. In extreme cold, people slept together, not for comfort, for survival. Shared body heat reduced fuel use and stabilized indoor temperatures overnight when fires were out. Beds were positioned away from outer walls. Straw mattresses were thick. Blankets were layered, not just piled on top of each other. You see, air pockets between the layers trapped warmth much better than simply adding heavy weight. In some regions, people would even warm stones by the fire and then wrap them in cloth, placing them near their feet or core areas before going to sleep. It wasn't exactly luxury, but, it prevented freezing during the most dangerous hours of the night. This wasn't desperation. It was strategy. A fire that fills a cabin with smoke is honestly worse than having no fire at all. Back in World War II, those cabins really refined smoke control to an art. Chimneys were, narrow and tall, which created a strong draw. Dampers were used to control airflow, so fires would burn hot and clean. Wet wood was avoided whenever possible, since it wasted heat and produced dangerous smoke. Some cabins used secondary air inlets to reburn smoke before it exited. This increased heat output and reduced soot. People understood that fire wasn't just about flame. It was about control. Mastering airflow, it meant mastering heat. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Modern heating systems are honestly fragile. They depend on fuel deliveries, electricity, and, complex infrastructure. World War II heating methods depended on understanding. Understanding heat, air, materials, and of course, human limits. These cabins weren't warm because people suffered bravely. They were warm because people thought carefully. They observed, they experimented, and they passed down what worked. That's why these methods still matter, for off-grid living, emergency preparedness, and, anyone who wants resilience without reliance. And here's the interesting part. Every one of these techniques can still be used today. No patents, no power grid, just knowledge. World War II didn't just test nations. It tested human ingenuity at its rawest level. In frozen forests and isolated cabins, survival wasn't about strength. It was about efficiency. Use less fuel, lose less heat, stay alive. That mindset built systems that modern technology still struggles to match. And that's exactly why we talk about them here on Legacy of Survival. If you value forgotten knowledge, real history, and skills that actually work when things go wrong, this channel is built for you. Take a moment to like this video. It helps keep these stories alive. Share it with someone who cares about resilience. And subscribe to Legacy of Survival, so you don't miss the next piece of history that still has the power to save lives today.